that's our last speaker. And a fitting kind of exclamation point at the end of some of this, that it brings it back to the individual. Because if we're not careful, a lot of what we're talking about here sounds kind of like we're talking about an abstract thing, like the board or leaders or the workforce, things like that. And one of the things I think is critical for all of us is that we recognize that everybody is a person. Every single person in a workforce is a person. And we're all in the workforce. I hear boards use that term to talk about them quite a lot of the time. Well, they're in the workforce too. And we're all there. We all work for the same organization. So trying to pull together some of the threads then of what we've spoken about here. We've talked about a lot of stuff here, and undoubtedly there's a kind of core to it, which is about relationships, about individuals, about actually communicating with each other as human beings, about openness and transparency and honesty, about recognizing as leaders that we're often the problem, not the solution, and that maybe we need to take a good look at ourselves as part of all of this, and also that we need to recognize that we can't fix it with a magic wand. This isn't Gryffindor. You know, we are part of something, and we need to mobilize that something so that everybody has a part to play in making it something better. So I'm going to first off throw this open to my colleagues on the panel and ask a simple question to everybody, which is, if you had to say one thing from your talk today that you'd want people to take away, one thing that really people needed to take away and think about, and I'll give you a few seconds because I'll come up with mine first, so you've got some thinking, because you didn't know I was going to ask you that. If you had come up with one thing that you wanted people to remember tomorrow from all of this, what would that one thing be? So I'll go first. My one thing would be to recognize that leadership isn't a job title. It's something you do, which Juliet highlighted. It's an act, an intent. I mean, you're not a leader because of your job title. You're a leader because your intention is to take something somewhere and to make things better. I don't think it's got much to do with hierarchy or job title. Actually, I've known some of the most effective leaders and influencers I've known have not been in a management role at all. They've just had a desire to make things better, and they often get marginalized as difficult. I'll put my hand up here. I was going to say made redundant from school. That doesn't really work, does it? I got expelled from school for being a disruptive influence. No surprise. But what I was actually trying to do was challenge and find better ways and understand things more deeply. But it was an unacceptable behavior in that kind of environment. Probably it still would be, but maybe not. But the same thing might be true in organizations. So I'd want people to think about the fact that actually everyone has a part to play in this. And as a leader, maybe the most important thing you can do is enable. So moving on, let's go to Phil first. What would be your one takeaway thing?
Whoa, that's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's been so much inspiration, and one of the things that I've experienced this afternoon is my thinking shifting, which is brilliant. Because otherwise, what would be the point of turning up to a conference really and engaging? I think I want to follow on from what you were saying, Nigel, and it's something I've put in the chat, and it's not my line actually. It belongs to Professor Chris Moles at the University of Hertfordshire, but I would ask people to think about leadership as an ensemble performance, not a solo act. So it's kind of what you were saying, although I think the important emphasis there is that you start to then think about leadership as something that arises in relationship with other people. It reminds us that we're connected and we are reliant upon each other and interdependent. And then if you take that seriously enough, it then turns the mirror back around on yourself and say, well, so what am I then? And what am I capable of doing? And what is my job title and my job role here? If leadership isn't just something that I'm shooting out at other people, you know? So I think that would be my my takeaway on my sort of provocation, is to think about leadership as a relational quality and not as a set of skills that you're doing and shining out on people.
Thanks, Phil. I agree, absolutely. Not that it would matter if I didn't, but
no, it'd be fine.
Jules, then.
First of all, I don't know why I'm in red, because the light here is actually white.
Rose-coloured spectacles.
There's a red light in my window, just to say. I would just say, always be aware of your behaviour and your impact when you're under pressure yourself as a leader. That for me is the big takeaway. All the way through COVID, we've been doing webinars on just remember your people. You're under huge pressure, so you need to find ways to take care of yourself as a leader. you know, you really must take that seriously, because one of the best lines I've heard recently is, "You're invincible until you're not."
Yeah.
You know, many of us have had, you know, health crises where we've realized how human we actually are. And we mustn't forget that. But the other thing is also, please take care of your people, and don't forget them when things are particularly tough.
Yeah, thank you. That's really. Over to Kev.
Yeah, thanks, Arj. Again, I would say everything that you said, that Phil said, that Juliet said. But I think, I mean, when I finish conferences, I actually say it's about your people. Yeah. And I really think it is. And on my emails, if you've got an email from me, which I think most of you have, I've got a quote from somebody on that. And it says, if your actions as a leader inspire others to dream more, to actually learn more and become more, then you're a leader. And I absolutely think it's about that. It's about how you make others feel. I think feelings, emotions is what we should be, you know, nurturing with these people. Again, back to the motivation stuff. If people feel good, you get so much more out of them without asking. You don't need to ask them and tell them. It's about making them feel good.
I think happiness is underrated. Quite often when you talk to leaders and I say, do you think your people should be happy? The look they get on their faces is like they've just chewed a wasp. You said something obscene. Happy, they're here to do a job of work. But we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that happy people do better work. So let's try and have a happy environment where everybody actually enjoys being there. Thank you, Carolyn.
So for me, I think the takeaway is about thinking about beyond the bags and the bananas. So really, when we're looking at a culture of care, when we're looking at how to have happy people in a workplace, let's look at our culture, our leadership style. Let's look at what we're doing to our people and address the root causes of the problem, rather than just throwing mental health awareness training, mental health first aid and resilience building at them, because that's not what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at a much more strategic level. But it's been great. It's been great to hear everybody today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always think when you do this right, you should go away having learned more from the people who are attending.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Getting there myself. Absolutely. And that concept of box ticking has come up so often in almost everybody's discussion here, that we have a culture in so many organizations of ticking boxes to protect ourselves, and it isn't going to cut it.
No.
And we've got to do this for real. It's not a role play. Paul, got 8 seconds.
Well, I think I certainly qualify on the criterion of learning from the other speakers. So I've really enjoyed it. I mean, and again, like you mentioned about the box ticking there, I think an essence of leadership is acknowledging the limitations of hierarchy and governance, and particularly the ability and willingness to take other perspectives, be they from individuals within the organization, or I suppose, which is more in my line, actually there are people outside the organization that have a different view. And, you know, again, quite often the mismatch between the view that the organization has of itself and the individuals at the top have of themselves, and what the external perspective of them is. So I think the ability to take that wider view is a real characteristic.
Thank you. So I'm going to skip over you on purpose and come back to you last. Cassandra, please, next.
Thank you, Nigel. So I'm lucky because I've had time to think about this, and I have supported so many leaders over the last few months. So this is my plea, and that is to understand your own motivators as a leader, and to really nourish the hell out of them. You know, we're talking a lot about people, but as leaders, you know, you've had some really challenging decisions to make over the last few months, and I don't underestimate that at all. So firstly, look after yourself, and secondly, sorry, 2 things. Secondly, that everybody is an individual, so manage them in the way in which they want to be managed, you know. And I truly believe that nobody is intentionally being an arsehole. I believe that it's probably their motivators aren't being met. So they're probably in the wrong job. So if you can make the invisible visible, then actually maybe then you can have an adult conversation about it and they won't be an arsehole anymore.
I admire your optimism. Thank you. Anthony.
I'd say I think the greatest thing for governance is transparency, and coupled with it, the integrity to face the facts that, as you get them, having checked the facts as best as you possibly can. I mean, what I've said to people, I mean, if you get a bed and you think you could have done a little bit more about something, you probably should have done.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So your own conscience, if you can nurture it.
Yeah, yeah. Integrity is everything.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And then finally, then Sarah.
Thanks very much, Nigel. And I mean, yeah, my mind is just buzzing with lots of ideas and excitement, actually, because I think it's been such a fantastic afternoon. So thank you very much, Kev, for pulling all of us together. But in terms of, I guess, the two key things from my end, I think curiosity is one. So if you're truly curious in other people, but also then what's going on in the world round about you, that feels like it's one of those nuggets that really helps here. And then also that, you know, being humble enough to realize that if you are a leader, you're only as strong as your team is, and you're one of the team. So you're all there together, lined up together. And so making sure that everybody is okay, etc., around about you, as well as yourself, because if you're not good enough, you're going to pull everybody else down as well. So I think that was one of my takeaways as well. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely agree. And before we depart, I would just like to mention the sixth member of the Beatles, who without whom this would not have happened, and that's Rose. Rose, who is currently a piece of rock by the looks of it, something kind of magma, I would think. There you are.
And what
Rose,
a rock she is, Nigel.
She has. That's exactly right. You've been a rock from the beginning of this, and despite your current Gothic appearance, you've been a saint, I think, throughout all of this. I think so. Thank you ever so much. We're very grateful, and you're not off the hook yet because we're going to do loads of these. So, to those who remain, I mean, I hope you've all found it interesting. It looks as if you did, because almost everybody's still here. And the questions have been very interesting and very engaged and engaging throughout all of this. This has been something of an experiment that Kev put together, and that several of us have been involved, all of us have been involved at some stage in kind of trying to think through how we might do this. I think we've got through it alive, which was the first objective of the shift. And despite the gremlins attacking Anthony, even then he was able to come back on again. So I think that's the most miraculous Zoom conference I've been on for the last 9 or 10 months, because usually something goes horribly wrong. Often it's me. On this occasion it wasn't. So yet. So thank you all, my colleagues, for your participation and contribution to all of this. Thank you all to all of our attendees who've done such a cracking job of kind of engaging with all this and putting some of us on the spot. I've enjoyed greatly not being in the firing line because I didn't really have a slot, which is a joy. And somebody asked the question and Rose answered, I believe, that we will circulate the content out of the chat to people afterwards. We'll also be asking you to give us some feedback, not in a kind of a happy sheets kind of way, but in a kind of a action research kind of a way. We're going to use these as an opportunity to poll people's views about some very important stuff. And we hope that you'll be prepared to participate, because we probably know where you live now, so you're in trouble. So thank you, everybody, and thanks for being here. And let's all wave goodbye to everyone now. Thank you all.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.